"Mom, we need you to sign these papers. It's just a formality." My daughter said it with a smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. She slid the documents across my kitchen table like she was passing the salt. "But I've been a bookkeeper for 43 years. I know what a property transfer looks like, and I know when someone thinks I'm too old to notice." I didn't touch the papers. I just looked at her, at my only daughter, the girl I raised alone after her father walked out, the child I worked double shifts for, the woman I thought I knew. Behind her, my son-in-law Derek leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching me like I was a problem waiting to be solved. "What kind of formality requires me to sign over my house?" I asked. The kitchen went quiet. Not peaceful quiet. The kind of quiet that sits between people who've stopped pretending. "I'm 68 years old. My name is Margaret, though everyone calls me Maggie. I paid off the mortgage 8 years ago with money I saved penny by penny, working at the same accounting firm until my fingers knew the calculator keys by heart. This house has 3 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, and a magnolia tree in the backyard that blooms every spring like clockwork. It's not fancy, but it's mine. Every nail, every painted wall, every creaky floorboard, mine. My daughter Nicole moved back in 2.5 years ago. She and Derek had lost their condo in Atlanta after Derek's restaurant failed. They showed up on my porch with 2 suitcases and her 5-year-old son Caleb, tears in her eyes, promises on her lips. "Just until we get back on our feet, Mom. 6 months, tops. 6 months." That's what she said. And because I loved her, because she was my blood, because Caleb wrapped his little arms around my neck and called me Grandma, I opened my door. I opened my home. I opened everything. The first few months weren't bad. Nicole helped with groceries sometimes. Derek fixed the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom. They were polite, grateful even. I enjoyed having Caleb's laughter fill the rooms that had been silent for too long. After my husband passed 15 years ago, the house had felt too big. Now it felt alive again. But gratitude, I've learned, is a fruit that spoils faster than you'd think. By the end of the first year, the guest room had become their room. My living room furniture was rearranged because Derek said the feng shui was wrong. My favorite reading chair, the blue one, Henry bought me for our 20th anniversary, ended up in the garage because it clashed with their new aesthetic. They didn't ask, they announced. "We moved the chair, Mom." It looked dated, as if memories have an expiration date. Nicole started hosting book clubs I wasn't invited to. Derek installed a Ring doorbell without telling me, then got annoyed when I didn't know how to use it. Packages arrived daily, boxes and boxes of things they couldn't afford when they had their own place, but somehow could afford now. New kitchen gadgets, decorative pillows, a 70-inch television that replaced the perfectly good one I'd had for 8 years. "We'll pay you back," Nicole said every time. They never did. Caleb was the only bright spot. That boy loved sitting with me on the porch, listening to stories about his grandfather, learning to play checkers, asking 1,000 questions about everything. But even that started changing. Nicole began scheduling him so tightly, soccer, tutoring, playdates, that our porch time dwindled to almost nothing. "He needs structure, Mom," she'd say. Not just sitting around. As if teaching a child to slow down, to think, to connect, was wasting time. I swallowed it all. Every small cut, every casual dismissal. I told myself families adapt. I told myself I was being too sensitive. I told myself this was temporary. But temporary is a word people use when they're not planning to leave. Last spring, I came home from my weekly grocery run to find strangers in my living room, a young couple, nicely dressed, walking through my house like they were at an open showing. "Oh," the woman said when she saw me, "we didn't realize anyone else was here." I stood frozen in my own doorway, grocery bags cutting into my fingers. "I live here." Derek appeared from the kitchen, smooth as butter. "Mom, these are just some friends of ours. They wanted to see the neighborhood, but the man was taking photos of my crown molding. The woman was asking about square footage. They weren't friends. They were buyers." That night, after the couple left, I searched my address online. There it was, my house, listed on 3 different real estate websites. Photos of every room, including my bedroom, a description that read, "Charming Savannah home, motivated sellers, great investment opportunity." Motivated sellers. They had listed my house for sale without my knowledge, without my permission, without a single word to me. I sat at my computer until 2 in the morning, reading the listing over and over, trying to understand how my own daughter could do this, how the child I had sacrificed everything for could look at my life and see only a transaction. The next morning, I confronted them. "I found the listing," I said, keeping my voice steady. Years of delivering hard news to clients had taught me how to stay calm when everything inside was screaming. Nicole's face went pale. Derek's jaw tightened. "Mom, you don't understand," Nicole started. "Then explain it to me." Derek stepped forward. "This house is too big for you. You're almost 70. The stairs alone are a liability. We thought if we sold it, we could all move somewhere more practical. You'd have a nice little apartment, something easier to maintain, and we'd use the rest to finally get back on our feet." "Get back on your feet," I repeated, "with the money from selling my house." "Our house," Derek corrected. "Practically speaking, we've been the ones maintaining it." I stared at him. This man who had replaced my light fixtures without asking, who had painted my bathroom gray because he thought white was sterile, who had stored my husband's golf clubs in the attic because they took up too much room in the garage. "Maintaining it," I said slowly. Nicole rushed to soften things. "Mom, we've put so much into this place. The new appliances, the landscaping Derek did, the repairs, we've invested in it. That has to count for something." "Invested," I said. "With whose money?" She blinked. "You haven't paid rent in 2.5 years," I continued. "You haven't paid a single utility bill. You haven't contributed to groceries in over a year. Every investment you're talking about was made with money you didn't spend on things you should have been paying for." Derek's expression hardened. "We can't keep living like this, Maggie. Something has to change." Maggie. Not Mom. Not even Mrs. Patterson. Just Maggie. Like I was a roommate who had overstayed her welcome. "You're right," I said. "Something does have to change." I walked to my bedroom and closed the door. I didn't slam it. I didn't need to. Quiet can be louder than noise when it's full of meaning. That week, I called my attorney, a woman named Carolyn I'd worked with for 20 years. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, then said, "Maggie, they have no legal claim to your property. None. But if you want them out, we need to do this by the book." I asked her to prepare a formal eviction notice. 30 days. Legal, proper, undeniable. Meanwhile, I started paying attention in ways I hadn't before. I watched. I listened. I documented. I saw Derek meet with a real estate agent in the driveway, shaking hands like they'd closed a deal. I found printouts of apartment listings in the trash, circled options in Florida, all of them suspiciously affordable. I overheard Nicole on the phone saying, "She doesn't even use half the rooms. It's wasted on her. Wasted on me. My home. My life. Wasted." The final blow came on a Thursday evening. I was looking for stamps in the kitchen drawer and found a folder Derek had clearly forgotten to hide. Inside were more documents, pre-approval for a mortgage in their names, calculations of how much my house would sell for, and a printed article titled, "How to Convince Elderly Parents to Move to Assisted Living." Elderly. Convince. Assisted living. The words blurred and then sharpened. I understood completely. This wasn't about family. This wasn't about helping me. This was a takeover, planned and calculated, and I was supposed to be too old, too confused, too grateful to see it. But I've spent 43 years spotting discrepancies in financial statements. I know fraud when I see it. The day the eviction notice was ready, I invited them to sit down at the kitchen table, the same table where Nicole had eaten thousands of meals as a child, the same table where I'd helped her with homework, where we'd celebrated birthdays, where I'd told her about her father leaving and promised I would never abandon her. "I have something for you," I said, sliding the envelope across the table. Derek opened it. His face went red, then white. "You're evicting us?" Nicole's voice cracked. "Your own daughter?" "I'm asking you to leave," I said. "You listed my house for sale without my consent. You've been planning to take my home and send me to a facility. You've treated me like a tenant in my own life." "Mom, that's not fair. We were just exploring options that didn't include asking me what I wanted." Nicole started crying. Derek started arguing. But I'd made my decision, and no amount of tears or justifications could undo what they had done. "You have 30 days, I said. "I'll help you find a place if you need it. But this house, my house, is not for sale. Not now, not ever." The weeks that followed were tense. Nicole alternated between cold silence and tearful apologies. Derek barely looked at me. They started packing slowly, resentfully, as if I were punishing them for something they didn't do. But I didn't waver. Every time doubt crept in, I remembered that listing. Those photos of my bedroom online for strangers to see. That article about convincing elderly parents. Caleb was the hardest part. He didn't understand why we were fighting, why Mommy and Daddy were putting things in boxes, why Grandma seemed so sad. I held him tight and told him I loved him, that this wasn't his fault, that we would still see each other. "Promise?" he asked. "Promise," I whispered. On moving day, I watched them load a rented truck in the driveway. The morning was gray and humid, typical Georgia spring. Nicole carried the last box herself, then stood on the porch, looking at me with something that might have been regret. "I didn't mean for it to go this way," she said. "Neither did I." She bit her lip. "Do you think we can ever fix this?" I looked at her. My daughter, the baby I'd held in the delivery room alone because her father was already halfway out the door. The toddler who used to fall asleep on my chest. The teenager who screamed that she hated me and then cried in my arms an hour later. "Fixing requires honesty," I said. "Real honesty. Not the kind that comes after you get caught." She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. Then she walked to the truck, climbed in beside Derek, and they drove away. The house was quiet after that. Not lonely quiet. Different quiet. The kind that belongs to you. I walked through every room, touching walls, opening windows, letting fresh air in for the first time in what felt like years. I moved my reading chair back from the garage, put it exactly where it belonged, and sat in it as the sun set through the front windows. Henry would have understood. He always said I was tougher than I looked. I used to think that was a joke. Now I know it was a prophecy. That night, I cooked dinner for one. Just pasta and salad, nothing fancy. I ate at the kitchen table with a book propped open, something I hadn't done since they moved in. The silence wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. Nicole called a few days later. Short. Awkward. But a call. She said they'd found an apartment in Macon. Derek was interviewing for a restaurant manager position. Caleb asked about me every day. "Bring him to visit," I said. "When you're ready." "Really? He's my grandson." "That never changes." She cried again. But this time, it sounded different. Less desperate. More like the beginning of something. I'm not naive enough to think everything is fixed. Trust, once broken, takes years to rebuild, if it rebuilds at all. But I've learned something important through all of this. Setting boundaries isn't the same as closing doors. You can love someone and still refuse to let them take what's yours. You can be a mother and still be a person with rights, with dignity, with a home that belongs to you. Some evenings, I sit on the porch and watch the fireflies come out over the lawn. The magnolia tree is blooming again, white flowers bright against the green. The neighborhood kids ride their bikes down the street, and sometimes they wave at me, and I wave back. I'm 68 years old. I live alone in a house I own. I answer to no one. And if this story sounds familiar to you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own home, if you've ever been asked to shrink so others could expand, if you've ever wondered whether standing up for yourself makes you selfish, let me tell you something. It doesn't. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to love someone and still protect yourself from them. And if you're waiting for permission to do it, here it is. This is your permission.